I'm George Benting. I'm a solutions architect as part of the Meraki team based in San Francisco. I have not always been there. I was in the UK for 3 and a bit years with the Meraki team there, and now part of the huge Cisco family. So what I'm going to talk to you today about is Systems Manager. And you may wonder why I'm talking about Systems Manager in relation to wireless, but that will become clear a little later on. So it'd be really interesting to know, anyone here using Meraki Systems Manager already? That's a good number of hands. So for those of you who haven't used it or not sure what it is, Meraki Systems Manager is an enterprise mobility management solution / MDM for Windows, Windows Phone, Android, iOS, and OS X. And it allows you to control a whole range of functionality on your mobile devices and allow administrators to integrate the management of these mobile devices into the Meraki dashboard and with their network infrastructure as well. Now, Systems Manager has been around for a little while, and we have accumulated over 8 million currently installed agents, with more than 6 million active within the last 30 days. So it's a hugely widely deployed mobile device management, enterprise mobility management solution. And what we're looking at now is how we evolve that. How do we go and do really cool things that we can only do when we have things such as the EMM, MDM integrated with this network stack natively through the cloud. So in March this year, we announced we were changing the model for how Systems Manager was going to work. So before then, if you weren't aware, Meraki Systems Manager was a product that was available for free to anyone and everyone. So just to clarify, you don't need to have a Cisco or Meraki network to have Systems Manager. It will work on any network infrastructure that allows you to connect to the Meraki cloud via an IP address. So you can run it over cellular, you can run it over other vendors' networks. There's no limitation at all. But we really wanted to make it much better if you had it running on a Cisco or a Cisco Meraki network. And so in March, we announced a transition from this completely free version that we're offering to this now paid for version with enhanced features, enhanced integration that provides additional functionality when you're using it with your network infrastructure. And that's what we've been doing over the last few months, integrating more and more features. So what I want to talk to you about today is the one that's very specific to how you use the EMM and MDM to control the network, and especially wireless, and the Meraki wireless access points. And this is something we've termed Systems Manager Sentry. So the term Sentry isn't an individual feature, it's a collection of features and functionality which are only possible if you have a pure Meraki solution, so Meraki Wireless, or maybe a Meraki Security solution with the Systems Manager Mobile Device Management EMM. And what it's going to allow you to do is automate a number of security features or simplify the control and management of your network by allowing the cloud to do things automatically for you. Meraki is about simplifying IT, and we really wanted to make sure people that bought more and more parts of the Meraki stack, so we really like people who are moving towards the full stack Meraki solution, so switching, security, wireless, and MDM, to get even more out of it. So they're great on their own, but wouldn't it be better if they all had additional functionality when you had them all on one site? So the features that I'm going to talk about in Sentry are, first of all, Sentry policies, which is probably what I'd say is the headline one. This is the most exciting one. And what it is we can change any of the network group policies in Meraki devices, and we're going to talk specifically today, and I'll show you in the demo, about the wireless, based on information provided by Systems Manager. And I'm going to whiteboard in a minute some of the information we're going to get from the devices and how that works with like the Apple notification services and a few other things, and then we'll get into the demo. So Sentry policies allows, for example, very weird use cases to be met. And I had a customer at Cisco Live in Milan earlier this year come up with a use case that I thought was really quite outlandish. And we were able to meet it because we can take all these different checks that we can do on the mobile device and the checks that you can do, I'll talk about in a second, and then build them together and evaluate that and then apply firewall rules or traffic shaping rules or content filtering rules or other rules, any of those network policies that you have in the Meraki dashboard that you can apply on Meraki networking equipment based on the MDM. So Sentry policies is probably the headline one. The other two that we'll talk about today, and there are some smaller ones beneath it which we won't talk about, are Sentry Enrollment. So this is where you have a Meraki wireless deployment, and this allows you to automatically onboard mobile devices by setting a particular mode on the SSID. So a user associates to the SSID and it will not allow them to progress unless they are enrolled in Systems Manager for Mobility Management. That can be tailored, and we'll show you the interface in the demo on how that's going to work. And the last one is what we call Sentry Wi-Fi security, which is how you provide very easy EAP TLS deployments with Meraki. And that's quite interesting in how we can do it using the certificate provisioning capability of the mobile device management to allow you to deploy EAP TLS without you having to individually manage the client-side certificates on the mobile devices. So before we get into that, what are the checks? What are the things that we can look at on the mobile device which we can then use to trigger all of this other networking functionality? So the first set is probably the most basic that you would expect, which is called static tags. So we have this concept of tags in Systems Manager. Those of you who've used it will probably be familiar with it. And this is just like a label that is applied to the device. And we have two types: static tags, which are just like a text string that you apply to a device. So this could be like George's device, this could be like student, whatever you want. Interesting, but not the most interesting. The most interesting is what we call dynamic or auto tags. So these are evaluating the status, the posture, what's happening on the device, and then it automatically applies the tag and changes them depending on whether or not that changes. So the ones we can look at are, first of all, time. So we can check the time that the device is in, and we can create numerous different time profiles. And is this person in working time? If they're in working time with their device, then we want something to be different. We can check location. So we can use geofencing. So we use things such as the GPS location of the mobile device, or we can use IP location if GPS is not available to determine where the device is, and we can say, are they on the customer's premise? If they are, then they are allowed these set of rules. We can do things such as check who the owner of the device is. We can check which Active Directory group they're part of. We can check what type of device it is, and we can check the security policies of the device. And within that, there are a whole host of individual checks that we'll have a look at. So you can take all of these things, and going back to my discussion of the customer that was talking to me at Cisco Live in Milan, and they wanted this remote worker to only have access to the customer's data when they were on the customer's site, when they were meant to be at that site for the working hours that were defined. And we could evaluate all of these things, where they were, who they were, and what time of day it was, and then apply network policies following that. Now, the network policies are applied within Meraki networking devices. So in this particular instance, it wasn't going to affect the wireless because they didn't have a Meraki wireless access point at the customer site, but it was going to affect the MX security appliance, which fronted the application servers and could add firewall rule or traffic shaping rules relevant to that particular example. But we're going to talk about it in wireless. So the first thing that I want to have a quick go through is how we talk to these devices, because one of the things that can be tricky is when you want to sort of demo this and use all of this stuff, there are little delays involved along the way. And one of the reasons for that is we can't necessarily talk to your mobile device when we want to. We have to talk to that mobile device through Apple or Google, and in some instances we can talk directly when we have, say, a desktop or a laptop device where we have a slightly different agent setup. So you have, we'll just go for And I don't think it would be a proper wireless field day without a few cloud drawings, so I'll need to draw some clouds. So I have the Meraki cloud. And this is the Apple push notification service. And then we're going to have my iOS device, which probably doesn't look like this in real life. And also my very unrealistic drawing of a Meraki AP. So we want to talk to this device. We want to know what's up with it. And we can only do that through the Apple push notification service. So we go, hey.
No green.
No green?
Shop. Anything.
Okay. No green. So for those of you online who cannot see green,
try yellow.
I will. It's going to look really nice now. We've got multiple colors going on. Okay.
It's in 3D.
Does someone want to join me with the red pen? Okay. So we say, hey Apple, we want to talk to this mobile device, and we would have set up a relationship with Apple and this mobile device by getting a push certificate from Apple. So we go, hey Apple, we want to talk to the device. And Apple says, hey device, Meraki wants to talk to you. The device comes to us and says, hey, what's up? Checks in, works out what we want to do. And then we go, okay, tell us about yourself. And so we want to check various parameters on the device. Now, from that, we can then understand if something's changed. Is it being used by a different person? Have they installed a banned application? So for example, I want to show you how we completely change the network policies based on someone installing Facebook. So it comes back and it tells us what we want to know. And we're like, hey, they've installed Facebook. That's really not what we wanted them to do. And then we can either go in and manipulate the device itself. So we can, because we're doing mobile device management, go and change stuff on the mobile device. But because we're talking about the network today, we go to the Meraki AP down here. So this can be 5 and 5. And we change the group policies, the network policy settings on the mobile device directly. So this is an important way for us to talk to the device, and it's similar for Google devices as well. But it's important to know because at the end of the day, we're reliant on Apple asking the device. And sometimes that can take a few seconds, a couple of minutes. It doesn't immediately happen if Apple thinks you're asking the device for too many things too often, because then it reduces the battery life of the mobile device. So what we're going to go have a look at now, I'm going to fire up the Meraki dashboard, because we should obviously have a look at the Meraki dashboard. And we're going to look at the security policy side of things, which is the top line one. Then we'll look at the enrollment side of things. And then we'll look at how you would deploy the Meraki Wi-Fi security with EAP-TLS, where we use the certificates for the mobile device using Systems Manager. So I'm logged into the Meraki dashboard, and I have a network set up here. And in this, I have a number of client devices which have been enrolled in Systems Manager previously. Now, to set up that very easy enrollment, I have an SSID called Sentry Enrollment. Now, one of the things to point out is you don't have to have a wireless SSID to enroll things in Sentry if you have an iOS device. There is the Apple Device Enrollment Program, which is an incredibly easy way to have Apple automatically deploy the MDM to all your mobile devices. But what if you don't have your devices enrolled in DEP? What if you don't have an Apple device? Or what if this is a BYOD type of device where the user has not purchased it through your Device Enrollment Program account?
George.
Well, this is where you can get Sentry Enrollment on your side to make it really easy to set that up. So in here...
Could I ask a question real quick?
Sure.
You've used the word Sentry like 10 times in the last 20 minutes.
Yes.
I have no clue what you're talking about.
Okay. So Sentry is where we have network security functionality in the Meraki networking components that is integrated with the MDM. So rather than you having to have, say, a separate policy engine, or you're going to have a third-party MDM agent or software, which you have to integrate with the network in some fashion, this comes pre-integrated because all the parts are talking to the Meraki cloud infrastructure. So the MDM is part of the Meraki cloud and dashboard, and so are all the network components. So you don't have to do all of those integration bits that would previously be needed because we've done that for you. Does that answer your question?
No.
It's a product name.
Is it the
What
20th
is
century or the...
Sentry is a feature set name. So it's a name which we use to signify features which are unique to having Meraki networking devices with the MDM. So you wouldn't be able to have this functionality if you were to use it on, say, another vendor's wireless platform, or if you were to use it just over the IP network on a cellular network, for example.
Okay.
If I'm not clear, please let me know straight away, and I'll dive in.
Yeah, I get that.
So I have this SSID for enrolling devices, and to enable that, I just go to the splash page section and I select the enrollment method as my splash page method. When I select that, it'll then ask me which of my MDM systems manager networks it wants me to enroll into, and I only have one, so that has been pre-chosen for me. But if I had multiple systems manager networks, I could choose one of the others. So if you have different sites, or this is specific to a particular purpose, say BYOD, then it can enroll in the BYOD network. Finally, you then choose whether or not you want this to be mandatory, or whether or not you want people to have a choice, or maybe we have device types that we don't support. For example, BlackBerry. We don't support BlackBerry, and we can't do MDM for that. So if you set it to strict and they have a BlackBerry, then they're not going to be able to go through the splash page.
Quick question about Chromebook, because previously in the MDM, Chromebook was a supported device, but I don't see it as an enforceable one in the list.
Correct. So we do. So the question was, Chrome OS is not listed as a device in this page. We do support Chrome OS from a mobile device management point of view, but today we can't detect it as part of the enrollment process, so it's not an option for you to choose. So if you have Chrome devices, you would either need to use the click-through or focus choices, or enroll them in another way. You wouldn't be able to use strict because it would deny them access to the network. So we have my device enrolled, and here it is, George Bentinck's iPad. We have the details in here. We have with the standard systems manager, mobile device management, and you can see that we have some of the tags here. So we've got this basic static tag I mentioned earlier called enrolled, and we also have these automatic ones. So this one called Computer Club is actually a time-based tag, and we also have the one that's detected it's an iOS device. But the one we're looking at is the security policy. And we have a security policy that says no Facebook. And if we go down, we'll find that Facebook was installed by the user. It's not managed by the mobile device management. We didn't install it as an organization, and they've installed it on their mobile device. And we don't want them to use Facebook. So in this particular example, if they install Facebook, I then block Facebook on the SSID for that individual user. And the way that I've done that is by going up here, we go to the network portion of the Meraki dashboard. And so we go up here, and we've got our network portion, and we have a section called Sentry Policies. So this marries the group policies element of the Meraki dashboard, so that's traffic shaping, firewall rules, and so on, with the MDM. So in here, I choose the systems manager network I want to set this rule from. I then choose whether I want to check for all of the particular checks, a selection of the particular checks. You can negate that if you want. And in this case, I want to say if any of them have this security policy that says they're violating my no Facebook rule, then they block Facebook. So this element here, I'm going to show you first. So this is the security check within Systems Manager, and then this policy section is the check within the network where we then implement the rules. So I'm going to go back to Systems Manager. I'm going to go to Policies. And in here, I have my no Facebook policy. And I've chosen an application blacklist to prevent people using Facebook. So I could go and find more apps if I wanted to. So maybe I wanted to find, for example, the CNN app. I could go in and add that to my list. Or depending on the platform, we can check for other things as well. The device will then either meet these or not meet these, and that policy will change. The network policy itself is up here where it was previously in group policies. And so we have this one that says block Facebook. It's got one client. If we go look at our block Facebook, we have the network rules we have within the Meraki dashboard. And you can go in and apply those. And in this particular instance, we've added a firewall rule to block Facebook. So that device has that rule applied until it uninstalls the Facebook app. And here's my mobile device with that rule applied. So any questions so far? Okay. So the other thing that I wanted to talk about was how we can deploy EAP-TLS very simply using Systems Manager. So if we go into wireless and we go to SSIDs, we can look at the SSIDs we have configured. And we have this one here called Sentry Wi-Fi Security. If I go Edit Settings, we can choose WPA2 Enterprise. And if we choose Meraki Authentication, so this is not available for you to use with your own Radius server. This is where you want a very simple deployment where you don't necessarily have a Radius server for that location or for this user base, but you still want to deploy EAP-TLS. Then you can go down and you have this option here. And in this box, we just choose the tags that we want to allow on the network. So what this does is it checks for the tag on the mobile device. It checks to see that this particular instance has enrolled on the mobile device, and then it deploys a profile to either Android or iOS. So this is currently not available on Windows desktop platforms or OS X, but it will be coming to those. And it will deploy a profile with the certificate, the client-side certificate for the mobile device. So each Meraki customer organization has their own certificate authority, and we use that to provide the MDM agent certificate. To then be able to do the wireless, we create another certificate which we push to the device as part of a wireless profile payload setting to the iOS device. So if we go look at our device, although we haven't configured any profiles, we have this Meraki Wi-Fi profile with the client certificate embedded in it. Now, Apple does not allow the network to, the wireless network profile settings to access the base MDM certificates. So we create a new unique certificate per mobile device to connect to the network. If we wanted to then prevent this particular device from connecting to the network, we could go back to the page here and we could remove the tag for enrolled. So a very simple way of deploying EAP-TLS with client-side certificates where the MDM Systems Manager is managing all of that for you. Any further questions on what I've shown you as part of the demonstration so far? Okay. I have some hand signals from the back of the room. How much time do I have remaining, Lauren? 5 minutes. Okay. That does work.
We have one other person who will be doing question and answering.
Okay. So within Systems Manager, we do have a couple of other pieces of functionality that we have rolled into this feature set of Sentry. So if we go into where we have settings, and this again highlights where we want to make it very easy for IT administrators that are configuring Meraki network infrastructure. Maybe you aren't using those particular settings. You're not using Sentry Wi-Fi security or those other things. You're using your own radius server. You want to do your own configuration. But you don't want to have to type in all the details into the mobile device.
Before you click off of that page, can we check out the new version of this page?
We can check out the new version of this page.
Okay, cool. All right. It said to do it, and I was curious.
So the new version of the page, as with quite a few things in the Meraki dashboard, is an updated version of the UI, which may have new additional functionality. It may not, but we're looking at making it even easier to use or simpler to use in particular use cases. So for example, when you have lots and lots of devices, or you have very little experience of mobile device management, you are a network administrator, for example, and this is one of the iterations on the new interface to make it easier to use. And so if you are a customer or anyone using Systems Manager, you can try it out, and then you can tell us if you like it or not using the Make-A-Wish box. So I think you probably are all aware of what the Make-A-Wish box is, but for those who are watching online that may not be aware, the Make-A-Wish box is this free field form within all of the interfaces of the Meraki dashboard, where you can type in the changes you like or the changes you do not like. Maybe you want an access point with 30 antennas or something like that. You can make a wish, but the easier it is for us to make in terms of updating things through the cloud, then the more likely we are to be able to meet your requests. So if we go back here, I can go add some settings, and we can go choose Wi-Fi. We now have the option in here, rather than to just manually configure the settings, we can choose Sentry, and then we can import those settings automatically for the SSID that we're going to be using. So rather than having to have a tab open, copy those settings down, put them into the wireless profile, and then put them onto the mobile device, you can easily import those and then save it and then push it to the mobile device with the mobile device management. So a couple of, I just guess, final points based on some of the presentations we saw earlier with the CMX side of things. One of the interesting things that the Meraki team has noticed from the proof of concepts we've done with presence analytics and a large number of retailers is how it's possible to replace people counting systems that may traditionally use cameras with wireless technology. And almost always I get asked, well, how accurate is it? And with purely the presence-based location, I'm not talking the hyperlocation, the really accurate stuff, just the presence-based. The thing that is actually of most interest is the trend. So you can predict how the store is going to perform much more easily with the trend than you can do with like a single hard, fast number for that day. To the point where I was working with a retailer that deemed the trend sufficiently accurate. The trend was so similar to the trend they'd get from their camera counting system that they were going to continue with their camera counting system, but not necessarily deploy many more. They were going to start using Wi-Fi for that type of data set as well. So it's interesting to see how you can reuse this technology. Camera counting systems can be quite expensive and can only really be used for that type of service, whereby when you take wireless technology, which you can do mobile payment processing on, you can do guest access, and you can do location services, you just get a much better value offer from people deploying wireless technology than that bespoke sort of camera system type technology. Okay, so Lauren, I think I hand it back over to the other people who are going to be taking questions. I'm happy to take any other questions from the floor. That's the end.
Oh, Sam,
of
you already asked
the
one,
Meraki
so you don't
demo.
get to ask another one. So, now that you only have like a minute or 30 seconds to explain this, what is the reasoning behind giving away for free up to 100, and then the 101th device means I now need to pay for 101 devices instead of paying for one device and then in the increments up, because it ticks off a lot of customers. It really does. When we have that discussion, they say, oh, I would love to use the Sentry features, I would love to be able to do more of this, but I have to now pay for 101 instead of just paying for one plus whatever I add onto it.
It's a good question. The reason we have to do it that way is because when you pay for it, you get support for all of the devices, and you can't pay for support for a partial set of your devices. So if you end up with that 101, and you're told you need to pay to be able to use that one extra device over the 100 free you get by default, it's because we include support for all of the devices. It's not possible for us to say, okay, well, we will only charge you for the support for that one device, and they phone up with a different iPad and say, sorry, you're part of the free user base that doesn't have support included. We can't help you, but they paid for that one device. How do we know? So it gets quite complicated from that point of view to be able to manage that.
It seems kind of a convoluted answer, because it's not like all of a sudden I'm going to be calling you 101 times in a day as opposed to never calling you once. Because a lot of the stuff is more profile based, of having a configuration here that then gets applied to a group of devices. So I'm not necessarily going to call you for one particular device. Chances are, if I'm calling you because an entire group of devices is not getting the tags or not getting the configuration settings, not getting enrolled, whatever the case may be.
Did you try making a wish?
You know what, Sam?
So as a high-level pointer, please don't put support request in the wish box, because it's not the most effective way to get support. But if you want a feature, that's the way to do it.
And I know you don't necessarily have the answer. It's more,
I don't have an answer.
It's
you're
the
not
feedback
only
that people
person
give
to
us as partners.
Have made that comment, and we're always looking to see how we can sort of optimize this for the best possible way. Some people never want to pay for it ever, and some people want to pay for all the new features. They want all the new iOS 9 restrictions, for example, and for it, the most popular one with iOS 9 that we've seen so far is the signed by device serial number with VPP, rather than having to have a school of 1,000 students all with their own iTunes account, which really does simplify things. So it is a little bit of a trade-off. We did try and keep everyone as happy as we could be as we transitioned to the new model of Systems Manager. So if you get stuck in a situation, then you know who I am. You can ask me or the rest of the team at Meraki, and we might be able to sort something out or work something specific for this one customer. Question.
I actually wanted to re-ask a question that Lee asked earlier in the day. He asked to the other Cisco folks. When Meraki was first acquired, from a wireless perspective, they were going after a lot of the controller list deployments because of the no metal controller on site. Now that we have a controller built into an AP, that muddies that message considerably. Can you speak to the positioning about where Mobility Express fits into an opportunity from a controller's perspective, and where Meraki fits into that same opportunity from a controller's perspective?
I think on the top level it may muddy the waters, but when you get into a little more of the specifics, it's a little easier to understand. I think when you look at, say, I'm not an expert on Mobility Express, so I may not have all the details, but 25 APs, I believe, is the sort of sweet spot number for Mobility Express. Well, with the Meraki deployments, it's not one AP or 25 APs, it's whatever number you sort of want. And so one of my favorite examples is a reference customer of mine in the UK, this company called Ladbrokes. You can watch some of their content on our YouTube channel. They have 2,500 locations with one AP per location. And they started with just like one or two APs, and they didn't need a controller or anything else to get that working, but they could scale it to this huge scale very, very easily. So you can start small and end up very big. And Meraki is not about SMB or small, it's just about scaling without requiring those additional components. And if that suits the small customer, then great, or if it suits the huge customer, that's great as well. And Mobility Express sort of provides this option for people that are just not into cloud. Some customers are still unable to purchase these things where they have a license for a period of time. They want to buy it outright. And I've come across that quite frequently in some European regions where they're like, we're only going to have this money now. We may never know where we get some money again. So we would like to just buy it all outright for the next possibly 15 years.